So my poem was Living in Sin by Adrienne Rich, and just looking by the title, we can infer that the tone is going to be somewhat regretful. Sin is related to religion, so the subject of the poem is probably doing something that's immoral or unethical or against his or her beliefs. The speaker appears to be third person. The subject of course is a couple, and the poem talks about really their relationship and the struggles in their relationship. And the setting is a studio. There also seems to be tension throughout the poem because of the struggles they're facing in their relationship. And the tone of the entire poem after a first read appears to be disappointed and somewhat regretful. So going right into diction, the poem right away starts with she had thought. Thought emphasizes that there's doubt in her beliefs, that the studio would keep itself. So the studio is a place of either like an art studio where there's a bunch of creativity. So you could see love as an art. So that exemplifies that their hopes were that the studio would help them create art or really their love. But in another sense, the studio could be a very small, packed compartment where tensions could easily rise. So I saw studio as really being both. Next, it talks about hap heresy. She wished the taps were less vocal. So hap heresy refers right back to the religious context of the poem, like exemplified in the title where it says "living in sin." So obviously, specifically, the female is doing something against her beliefs or against her religion, something that's unethical, really. Next, it talks about the pains relieved of grime. So the grime is on their relationships, and she just wishes it wasn't there. Something's weighing her relationship down, and that's later identified in the poem. Moving on, it says that not at 5, each separate stair would writhe under the milkman's tramp. So first of all, writhe is defined as a twist of the body about or squirm as in pain or through violent effort. So the milkman's tramp, obviously is a negative connotation that causes stairs to writhe or almost hurt under his tramp. So that means that obviously the milkman or the man in the relationship is causing or inflicting some type of pain on the house, really on the relationship. Next, the man sounded a dozen notes on the keyboard, so rather than him playing, he sounded. So that specific diction exemplifies that obviously he's not putting much effort into playing the piano, so he's not going to put much effort into his relationship. And then he declared it out of tune rather than trying to fix it. He simply says, no, it's out of tune, it's done, we can't do anything. And then he shrugged in the mirror. So if you shrug, obviously you're not showing much sympathy or effort into the problems that he sees in the mirror, which could be the problems in his relationship. And then, so this is pretty much those several words of diction highlight the fact that the man's not putting much effort into the relationship, but next in the poem, it also conveys that the woman is not putting any effort into the relationship as well, because it says she pulled back the sheets, made the bed, found a towel to dust off the tabletop, and then let the coffee pot spill over the stove. These verbs used don't show much effort at all. She sees things going wrong as if the coffee pot is spilling all over, it's creating a mess, but she doesn't stop it. She knew it was going to happen and she let it happen. So obviously it epitomizes that she's not really putting much effort into this relationship either. So the blame is on both sides, and neither of them really want to take responsibility and fix it. Finally, at the very end, it talks about a relentless milkman again. So that diction simply illustrates or reiterates the fact that the milkman is not a positive person. It's someone that the female fears, or maybe not fears, but rather doesn't want showing up every day. So moving on to imagery, which is very present in this poem. At the very beginning, it talks about no dust upon the furniture of love. So obviously it's a dusty area, it's dirty. And this attributes to the metaphor prevalent throughout the entire poem that the house is actually a direct representation of the relationship. So using that, we know that since dust has accumulated, problems in their relationship has accumulated over time. Dust accumulates over time, so it emphasizes the passage of time. This is also highlighted when it says the tap's less vocal. When taps are vocal, it means that they're old, they're squeaking, it's not a new house. So it's not a new relationship and things are starting to break down. This is further exemplified when it says the panes relieved of grime. So there's grime on the panes of the house, meaning there's stuff weighing down their relationship as well. So that visual and auditory imagery emphasizes the fact that the house is a mess, meaning the relationship is a mess. It's falling apart. Something has to be done before it collapses. So then the poem kind of switches over to the fact that the subject's trying to cover up what's wrong in the relationship by saying a plate of pears, a piano with a Persian shawl, a cat stalking the picturesque amusing mouse. So if you walk into a house, a lot of times if it's well kept, you'll see a fake fruit basket on a table somewhere, and then a Persian shawl would mean that they're trying to seem cultured in a way. So they're hoping that when people walk into their house, they see right away, oh, this is a very sophisticated family, it's clean, it's kept, everything's going well. But if it's plastic fruit, it's fake. If it's a shawl, there's no value in that. It doesn't really prove anything. It's really just a decoy to cover up the fact that they're really struggling in their relationship. And the woman actually fears the public finding out that there are struggles that she's facing with her husband. Later, it talks about so coldly, the morning light would delineate the scraps. So scraps right away, this actually kind of goes into diction as well. Scraps are dirty, it's trash. So there's obviously scraps are collecting overnight from the relationship, and then the morning light coldly, which gives it a very negative connotation because the woman's afraid of the morning and really daylight in total. So it delineates or it underlies the flaws in the relationship, essentially. Next, it talks about beetle eyes. When you think of bugs, a lot of times they can be attributed to spies. So when you see bugs in the movies, sometimes they're spying on the person. And then that's later right away followed with an envoy from the village in the moldings. So this expresses the fact that the woman is afraid that her secret, that her marriage is kind of falling apart and that their relationship is falling apart, is going to be found out and sent to the public. Her private life will be unveiled and the public is going to figure out. So she's somewhat paranoid that this will get out. Next, this is more auditory imagery, where it talks about how the male or the husband sounded notes, which we already talked about. He's not putting much effort, but you can hear kind of the uneven, choppy sound of the piano, which automatically reflects the relationship. And it also talks about how he has a beard and that he smokes cigarettes. So this gives him like a dirty appearance. He's just not putting effort into keeping himself presentable. So why should he put effort into keeping his relationship presentable? He really just doesn't care. And finally, with the coffee pot boiling over, that again just emphasizes that woman doesn't care either. She's going to let it make a mess and further worsen the relationship in the house. So next I'd like to emphasize the sound devices used. Earlier in the poem, we talked about a plate of pears, a piano with a Persian shawl, and a cat stalking a picturesque, amusing mouse. So it's evident that alliteration, the sounding of the P, the p, and that kind of sounds like the leaky taps. So that further emphasizes the leaky taps throughout the house, which the author uses to convey the fact that, again, it's a relationship that's breaking apart. Also, it's very important to notice that morning light has a very negative connotation, and daylight as well, because again, the female's so paranoid that the public's going to figure out that the relationship's falling apart. Things hide in the dark. You can't see the flaws. But then once the morning light comes out, it's hard to cover up what's going wrong. So she's fearful that her private life is going to be unveiled to the public, and that's why she's so afraid of the morning light and prefers to have her relationship solely during the night. Finally, it's really important to know that just to understand the metaphor that the house does directly reflect the relationship. And finally, also that a milkman is someone who comes regular on a regular basis. It's a cyclic thing. This thing that meaning that this relationship, it's the same process over and over and over again. The milkman is simply a device that symbolizes that every night they possibly get drunk, they enjoy themselves during the night, but in the morning they wake up, they're sober, maybe hungover, and they struggle throughout the day, and the light unveils all their problems, and then it comes right back to night again, and it's a cyclic process. And because they're not putting any effort into fixing it, it's only getting worse and worse, and eventually their relationship is going to collapse. So in conclusion, if we look at the title again, Living in Sin, obviously that's referring to the fact that both of them know that the relationship's falling apart, but neither of them are doing anything to fix it, and that is the sin itself. And so the overall theme of the poem would be that if you're in a relationship, you can't expect for the studio to keep itself, meaning you can't expect your relationship to thrive without you putting any effort into it first. So sure, it may be amazing at first and you see it blossoming into something amazing, but you have to put effort into that. Over time, if you forget about it, it's just going to crumble just like the relationship in the poem did. And so that is what the poem is about. Thank you.